Hi everyone and welcome to a new video. This one is going to be about making Aurora's blue dress from the second Maleficent film, and as usual I have my iPad down here which has my close friends story highlights, and that's where I post all of the detailed sewing progress on each of my projects if you're interested in seeing the actual detailed construction. So this has been a dream cosplay for a very long time, ever since I saw the photos of the dress before the movie even came out. So it was always on my list to do, but I never thought I had the skills to do it because the dress has leaf embroidery all over it. I think it was done with an embroidery, like freehand embroidery machine, and each of those leaves were handcrafted and then sewn onto water-soluble fabric, and then the soluble fabric was dissolved in water, and then it was just left with the leaves, and then all of that was then used to construct the dress. And when you look very closely at the dress, it looks like there are no straps holding it up. It's cut off maybe at like the knee, so you can see her legs beneath it just with the tulle fabric. It's not a usual garment, and it's very confusing in how it's constructed. So I knew that I wouldn't be doing it exactly how they made it, but I wanted to do some version of it. And last year in 2022, Lincraft was kind enough to have me come into their stores and purchase a bunch of fabric to promote their sale, and they just so happened to have the perfect lace fabric. They had the perfect color blue fabric for the underlay of the dress, and also the perfect color tulle and netting overlay. So I got blues and purples, and it was just the perfect combination of fabrics, and even the trims as well, they were all from Lincraft. So I was so happy to find all of that at Lincraft, and that just made me want to do it. So that's what I did. So the lace that I got is a white stretchy lace, and it needed to be dyed to the right color blue. And I did a lot of dyeing tests because I was so nervous about dyeing it too dark of a color. I wanted to keep it very light. So I did a lot of tests. With the tests, I just cut up bits of scrap fabric and popped them into the dye mix. And I did a bit of a mix of blue and purple. The two dyes that I use are the RIT liquid dye for synthetic, I think. Oh, it was the all-purpose one, and I used royal blue and also violet. As for the base dress, I used a cotton fabric, and again, like I said, from Lincraft, and it was already in a nice pale blue color, and I think I just added put it in the dye mixture just for a little bit so it could blend in well with the lace color as well. After dyeing that fabric, I did have to iron it, which took quite a while, and I was using the pattern from Butterick, and this is B4377, and it's a medieval dress pattern which I've used before. I think I used it for my green medieval dress, which was my Susan cosplay. So I cut the bodice pieces both out of the cotton voile blue layer and also the cotton calico, which I would use as lining, I guess, lining or interlining. And I sewed all of those pieces together, and I made some minor adjustments. I lowered the neckline a bit because her dress had quite a low neckline for the base dress, and then on top the lace came up above a bit higher. So just going back through the stories on my Instagram, I did use the cotton calico as a lining, but as a lining it did help with keeping the structure of the bodice, so I guess it sort of acted as an interlining as well for the fashion layer fabric. As for the skirt, I folded the fabric into rectangles and then I cut triangles, and I just used however much fabric I could from the fabric that I had left over. So any off-cut triangles that I had, I would insert those into the skirt to make the skirt more full, and I would insert those as gauze. I also added a pocket to the skirt, of course, a must-have pockets. The pocket was made out of calico cotton fabric, and I sewed that into the skirt, and once that was done, I then attached the skirt to the bodice. The skirt is completely unlined, but the bodice, like I said, was lined with cotton calico, so I just made sure that that waist seam was nicely finished from the inside, using the cotton calico to cover up the raw edges of the skirt. So that's basically the base dress done. I was super happy with how this looked. I put in a zipper in the back. I think it's an invisible zipper from what I can remember. And the skirt was super full. I loved how flowy it was. I wanted to make mine a full-length skirt rather than a short skirt like in the movie, simply because I prefer that look. I prefer it to cover my legs. And I had straps as well for the base dress because I couldn't think of any other way to have there be no straps, and also I just wasn't feeling like the lace would be secure enough on its own to hold the dress up. I wanted to have something a bit more sturdy like the cotton. So when it came to making the blue lace overlay dress, I was very stumped. I had to think on this for such a long time as to how I wanted to make it. I ended up using my green dress as a guide for how to cut the dress pattern. And the lace, like I said, had a bit of stretch, so I knew that I could just pull it over the top of me and that would work, whereas the cotton layer needs a zip because the cotton doesn't have any stretch. So I always knew that that's how I was going to construct it. It also means that I can put the base dress in the wash, in the washing machine, and then the tulle layer, the tulle and the lace layer can then be hand washed if needed. So I cut the lace dress, so there was one front panel and one back panel, sewed the two side seams together, and I left a little gap in one of the side seams so I could reach into my pocket in the base dress. Moving on to the tulle layer, I used it was a very, I think it might have been a bridal tulle. It's very soft. It's not like that stiff netting. It's not that kind. It's just a very soft tulle. That's what I used to make an overlay on top of the lace layer. And I used the lace layer as a guide to cut out that pattern. And yet another layer was the purple netting layer. This is a very fine netting, almost like mesh or tulle, and it had a really beautiful color, and I thought that it would go super well with this dress, so I wanted to also include that layer in this dress. So there's a lot of layers, and we're not done yet with the layers. For the sleeve, I used my green medieval dress as a guide as to how I wanted to cut the sleeve, and because the lace fabric has a bit of stretch, I didn't worry too much about that needing to fit my arm. I cut the sleeve shape following my green dress, and that comes all the way up to the shoulder so I could sew it to the arm side of the lace dress. So I draped all of the layers onto my dress form. I had the base cotton layer, I had the purple netting layer, I had the lace layer, and then I also had the tulle blue layer on top of that. Similar to the lace sleeves when I sewed them to the lace dress, I sewed the tulle sleeves to the tulle dress, and I didn't need to hem any of the edges because all of the raw edges don't fray, thankfully, on the tulle. And I also made a tulle underskirt out of the stiff tulle. So this is a bit different to the tulle that I used for over the top of the dress. This I needed to have a bit more body because I wanted it to be underneath the lace dress, I think. I can't remember which order they go in, but it's another layer yet again, and it's just for the skirt part to provide a bit more structure to the skirt and make it flow outwards into that A-line shape. Now onto the leaf details. This was something I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I started experimenting and I cut out little leaf shapes starting from the bottom of the skirt and started creeping up, and at each narrow point of the leaf shape, I would tie that into a knot, and I felt that that worked super well for the effect that I wanted. So I wanted it to look like leaves cascading down the dress. So that took a very long time to do, cutting into the lace and continuing up along the whole hem of the skirt and going up to about knee length or even higher sometimes, and trying to get all of that to look uniform, but also not too uniform. I wanted it to look quite natural and organic. So I started doing that, and then I also wanted to hem the dress. So for this, I popped my dress form up onto the table and started marking where the hem was with chalk. And because there was so much volume in the skirt, I didn't mind if this wasn't completely even. With all of the layers of the tulle and the lace on top, it's very hard to tell where the hem is anyway on the base dress. So I just marked that with chalk, chopped it all off, and then did a simple rolled hem. So for Aurora's belt, I got all of the materials from Lincraft. They have this really beautiful white lace leaf trim, and also I got some light green cord. And with this, I cut out each of the little leaves. I would cut out maybe 4 leaves on each stem, as I call it, and I would tie those in a knot onto the green cord. And that's essentially how I made the belt. There was no sewing involved. It was all just knots, tying knots and cutting out leaves. So that was the process for making the belt, and I think it turned out really, really great. To attach the belt, I had a little loop with the cord, and I would just feed the other side of the belt through the loop. And it means that it's adjustable. It also means that there are no visible closures. It's all just the 2 materials being the cord and the white leaves. And so I think it really ties into that fairy effect, like the dress having been made by fairies. And then the final touch was adding loose lace leaves all to the tulle layer. So all of these, I would just pin them onto the tulle at different various points, and I would just stick them under the machine and hand sew each of them on. And that's the dress done. So I wore the dress for the first time to a cosmeet or cosplay meetup with some of my friends. And this was around August last year in 2022. And I had a super fun time wearing it. I was so happy to finally have made one of my dream cosplays, and super comfortable to wear. Looks really great, love spinning in it, and love that it's got pockets. And it's one of my favorite costumes that I've made. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that you might want to know about this dress, but if you do have any questions, let me know in the comments. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I post all of my close friend stories onto my Instagram for Patreon supporters. So if you'd like to support me there, please go check that out. I'll leave the links in the description box below. So that's it for today's video. I hope you have a great day or night wherever you are, and until next time, stay creative.